Underneath the flyover was derelict. It didn't have much going on. It was mainly rubble. The motorway was still being completed.
For the people that lived in the stretch of Acklam Road from Portobello Road to the east was quite derelict, and they were so close to the motorway as well. I had bits of bronchitis, and when I went to my then doctor, he said, oh, it's all the dust and the dirt from building the motorway. It's so common now, which is interesting, isn't it? Because this is still being said today, but that's more from car pollution.
The housing conditions were appalling. There was a lot of private rented accommodation. It looked as if the people who were housed by the council and council housing were by far better off than the people in the streets about where we lived.
Parts of North Kensington were slightly better than around this area, but this was awful. Half of the households didn't have a bath. Feels like Dickens or something at the time, but it wasn't. Friends of mine, they got permission to use the derelict land. The kids made things out of the rubble. I bought a couple of hammers and a couple of saws and a huge bag of big nails, and I took it down there. And the next time I went, about 3 or 4 days later, there were 2 buildings there that were, quite big.
The opening was a political event. It was Michael Heseltine. I went with a group of people from a street near the roundabout, and they decided that their voice should be heard. And their greengrocer's lorry an accompaniment went down the upslip road.
There were police guarding all of the entrances going onto the motorway, and so they went up the exit ramp at the western end of the motorway and drove along and arrived behind the opening ceremony as it was happening. And the cameras are all facing west, and this huge lorry comes up with banners all over it and stuff. Oh, some very exciting times then.
The disruption was shown around the world on TV and caused a great deal of consternation from the government because they'd made them look bad. And over that weekend, they decided to clear Acklam Road and the space near the roundabout. Instantly, a decision was taken within days because people were just pointing out how close the pollution, the noise was going to be to the remaining houses.
I said, I'm interested in getting the space under the motorway used for the community. The problem was that if we got our ideas through and the GLC said yes, then it was likely that Kensington and Chelsea Council would take it over.
It was given over to the council to develop for community use. The council then gave it over to North Kensington Amenity Trust, which is what Westway Trust was known at in those days.
When they built the motorway, houses were in fact demolished. People lost their homes. So a promise was made that the land beneath the motorway will in fact be used in part by the community, for amenities, which is why they call it Amenity Trust.
The Anthony Perry administration from 71 to 76 founded the Acklam Hall and the Portobello Green. They had these renowned to this day legendary 3 gigs on the Portobello Green.
There was a little theatre facing McCann, which was opened by the Prime Minister Harold Wilson at that time. McCann was an empty space where they used to store the stalls, and then we went behind that. I thought there might have been some toilets, and then the playground, which occupied a couple of spaces, Bay 56, 57. This was before the steel band came there. The playground was there first. and then Acklam Hall, where it is.
The idea of having a cross-subsidy between commercial tenancies and community activity was born in the very early days of the Trust. The Trust was set up in 1971. The first director was a guy called Anthony Perry, and he actually had some of the early ideas for creating some business units for local businesses and using the space. And Roger Matlin probably shaped that more into the idea of cross-subsidy. And I think those units probably were planned during Anthony's time and then built during Roger's time. And I think New Line were probably one of the first tenants. You know, and they expanded along the way. And they always had a pretty productive relationship. They used to sponsor stuff at the sports centre as well. They're a successful local business. It's important, I think, that if you're going to have a vibrant local economy and you're going to provide like jobs and opportunities to people, you've got to have opportunities for people to work and space to work. And it's good to employ local people in local businesses, and indeed for other people to purchase things from those local businesses.
So we've got the area across the whole estate is mixed up into around 6 different operations. As you see as we walk along, the structure of the A40 structure is going to change. There's 5 different methods, forms of construction. If you like, it was a bit of an experiment back in the 60s as it was being designed and constructed. So you'll see the structure changes, the format changes, and the possible type of uses underneath the building changes. We have sports centre in one section, we've got heavy mechanics in Stable Way, we've got commercial retail outlet on the corner of Portobello Road, we've got offices and charity operations on Thorpe Close, and then we have more of our trade counter and garages on Moulton Road. It all just fits in with the structure of the A40. The end of Moulton Road onto St Mark's Road, where we enter in Maxilla Walk, is Bay 20, 71 St Mark's Road, which has just been completed, providing a new boxing club and a community hub. This was provided by the BBC DIY SOS programme.
Bay 20 was the site of the Carnival Industrial Project.
That was a project set up by Manpower Services. People would come and do classes or learn to do leather fabric, learn to make costumes, make headpieces, or learn to tune pans.
Young people were learning trades, which meant that would have built businesses for those young people. So what is the cost of shutting those things down? And nothing happened there after that was shut down.
There was a temporary art project that was supposed to go on for 6 months. It was part of an initiative with a guy called Terry Oliver. At the time he was working on an environment project, turned unused bits of land into something that offered something back. And they did an art competition, and they came up with that project with the strings of lights and stuff, which are supposed to mirror the lights on the road above. And it looked great at night when it was first built, but it was supposed to be there for 6 months, and it ended up being there for probably more than 6 years. We didn't take that stuff down until they built the DIY SOS Dale Boxing Club building.
The director that came in during that time to oversee the trust businesses, which was Roger Matlin, he decided to commercialize a lot of it. To develop a lot of the land, he went into partnerships with a lot of private companies in the city and other places, and they were investing money in some of the development that took place. So therefore it started going out to businesses and people who could pay the rents and stuff like that. And this was what was the problem with Westway Trust. So that fight over properties under the Westway Trust has been going on since the early 70s. And well, it wasn't Westway Trust at the time, but Westway Trust has just carried on where Roger left off.
There are many business interests in this space, and it should be a space that we do collaborate on and partner with different organisations, charities and businesses. However, the priority should always be the community.
In the early stages, there was more of a community mandate for what was being built. So the adventure playground was on these same parts where we're standing here. Also was Ebony Steel Pan Yard.
I loved it when I was really young, being raised in Ladbroke Grove and experiencing many different amazing and thriving activities under the Westway. My first experience of any sort of community gatherings or involvement in my community in Ladbroke Grove under the Westway was when I used to go to Acklam Playground, Adventure Playground. So I loved that very much. It was a great place to be, getting to know all the people in the area, playing with other children.
The Barnyard is a place where we gather and we have rehearsals, where we store equipment. That's where we were for 30 odd years. All that was taken away. For this, we have a bar where the play center used to be, and the back of it was where we had our Barnyard.
Westway 23 came together because of what was happening at West London Stables with Sarah Turvey, the problems she was going through, what was happening at Maxilla Nursery, combined with the plans for the Portobello Village development, what was going on at the flyover with Huey Walker. So all of us as a community were under attack in different ways for services that we were supplying for our community that were beneficial to the community. All of those things were being attacked and shut down in 2015.
I suppose what used to be the bar and cafe bar above the fitness club has been through a few iterations. It's now West Bank. It had previously been Flyover, which was a kind of bar and music project towards the end of my time at the trust. Prior to that, it had been In on the Green, which was a kind of again a bar with music and stuff like that, run by a couple of local people. Dave Pitt and Tina Alcaff have been involved in a lot of stuff around here.
We opened in, I think, 2004, and then we closed around May 2011, and it was 7 days a week. We had wakes there, we had weddings there, we had christenings there. So I felt that we really served the community well. It was the bar and the area right around it. Then where you now have little offices that were built, they weren't there, so sometimes we'd have a band on that area. We ran salsa classes every Monday night, which were hugely successful. We had theatre productions in there.
There was a nursery down on Maxilla, and one of our early development plans was to rebuild that nursery, but that subsequently became a local authority children's centre, and in the round of cuts after the coalition came to power, there were reductions in children's centre provision. The children's centre services were merged into the children's centre, I think initially by Trellick. So that was no longer a viable site, it was closed down and ultimately became a number of other things.
Maxilla Nursery was founded in 1978. It was one of the first buildings, I believe, to be built underneath the Westway, and it was called Maxilla Nursery Centre at the time, and it was a cutting-edge model that hadn't really been explored in the UK before that time, and it provided wraparound care for 0 to 5-year-olds, but it also included their parents in what it provided for the local community. It had gone through a lot of hardship through the years of threatened closure from the council, and sadly in 2015 we lost our battle. The local community put up a really good fight once again to try and stop the council from closing the children's centre, but sadly they didn't win it this time. I was incredibly sad about that, and I recognised it as a really important piece of North Kensington's social history.
The council and the railway people who own the land, who were connected with the land, that's the promise that they made to the residents. Not only the Caribbean people were residents, the residents were Irish people and all kinds of people living around here, the Moroccans and stuff. So it's something that, would cause a little discomfort, because people, if they think that the promises are not being kept, so it would hurt them, and they would fight for it. It would appear that that's what is going on now and has been going on for some time. I don't think it will go away until it is resolved in its own way.
During Anthony Perry's directorship, there were some moves made that were working with the community, including his work with Leslie Palmer on the Carnival in 1973.
I saw an advertisement put on by the Amenity Trust in time out saying they're going to be meeting 7 weeks before the carnival. I said to him, you know, I have some ideas to whereby the youths, the young people and the sound systems could have an active role. And if you're having a carnival, you must have costumes and you really must have stalls.
I was the first person to bring out the children on the streets of carnival. But I worked with the playgrounds. I worked with all the playgrounds. Some years we had like 200 children on the road for carnival. But as years go by, the children get bigger and you find the space that was given to you is automatically taken away. The Westway came in '88 and they were a very big help to me. I would always speak about them. I met Roger in the early 80s and he stepped in, and I was then about the only person that he would say, yes, we help in the carnival. And he did help with the children. And when Roger left in that sense, he put me on to Johnny. And Johnny came on board and we always, every year, until today.
When you come from all different walks of life and you're here and you're without the country that you came from. It's different for me because I grew up here, but for my mum's generation in particular, that there was something almost missing for them and they wanted to bring that back. And the way to bring that back was to have a carnival, so to speak, so they could have something that culturally that they remember, that it's theirs. It's now ours, but it was theirs.
The carnival actually impacted upon the whole of Britain. You can't please everybody, so some people don't like it. Up to today, they don't like it. They say that reggae music or soul music or funk music or African music has got no part in the carnival. Well, of course, I disagree because, you know, I don't live in Trinidad. I live here, and here I've got all kinds of people, so you have to reflect the society in which you live.
Post-punk reggae times, late 70s, early 80s, it was a thriving kind of scene.
Aswad came out of Ladbroke Grove, so, you know, and they first featured in Carnival on a live stage right here on the Green.
One of the people who had associations in the local music industry with The Clash, Mick Jones, you know, from The Clash, came to us with a project called the Rock and Roll Library, which he'd been looking at and, you know, running in temporary spaces, and we had a big session there where we literally, it was like a curated series of rooms that talked about his past in music and what his cultural reference points were. So it's a bit like an insight into the mind of a creative person.
For as long as the Westway has been up and the motor has been there, the music has been there. I came there in 1988 and started a thing called Subterranean, which used to be Acklam Hall. Before that was Bay 63 and it was other spaces as well. It's had a real rich history of good music. Lots of artists have actually played there in their younger days and then gone on to bigger things, like Eminem did his first gig here, first ever in the UK.
When I was a teenager, I used to also go down to North Kensington Amenity Trust, and also when I was a little bit older, North Kensington Video and Drama Project. So there was always a lot of support in the community for young artists, young up-and-coming artists.
It's a place where lots of artists and avant-garde type people have lived for a long time, and when they meet up and mix together, something comes out of it. I mean, that's the idea of the film festival, really. It's a chance just to bring all these new filmmakers together and get them a chance to meet each other and hopefully, you know, make the British film industry a bit more interesting. The Portobello Film Festival started in 1996. Then we did move to Subterranean, and then we moved to the pop-up cinema. It was a lot to do with this guy Chris Bailey. It was partly his vision. Together with us, who were the Portobello Film Festival, Tim Burke, who was a local kind of entrepreneur.
Tim Burke was the guy who was very responsible for the setting up of the pop-up cinema, and that was totally, you know, his project, it was his vision, and managed to work with a lot of other community groups. It gave a lot of people the opportunity for showings. We had a lot of kind of, you know, quite iconic shows, working with people like Human Rights Watch, also working with local youth organisations. We had kind of, discussion of the riots in the area, just shortly after that with some of the local youth groups. So there was a lot of ways in which that space then became a resource that was used by other people in the area.
We got 2 containers, put one on top of the other, and that was the projection booth, and Tim got this amazing screen that was enormous, that's still there. And we got a really good projector, not a bad sound system. And then we were there for 5 years, which was basically, it was heaven for us. And we had Dave Pitts, who used to run the Inn on the Green, doing the bar. We had the cheapest bar in Portobello. It was just a great place to hang out, and we just showed non-stop films, which we do for 18 days every year. You had a lot of artists, writers and painters and filmmakers moving in. And that's what made the place interesting. And of course, it's ironic that that also makes a place sort of popular. So then you end up getting richer people moving in because they think it's trendy. But to be honest, that hasn't just happened around here, it's happened everywhere. It probably happened here first, because I think that's one thing about Portobello is that things tend to happen here before they happen in other places.
I came on board with Countrywide Markets, who have operated the market for just over 36 years. It was a bric-a-brac flea market back in the early sort of 90s. Then it was grown into a vintage market around about 95, and it's just grown into such a success. The Acklam Food Market was introduced 3 years ago. We introduced gazebos and food from all around the world.
It's always a buzz to the place, always nice, interesting people, friendly faces, and sometimes a bit of business.
I retired earlier, and then it was just too boring to stay at home, so I came back. I do everything myself. Say, for example, the earrings on the table. When I make clothes, and whatever is left from the clothes I make, the pieces, I use them to make the earrings. So nothing from my product is wasted.
You get a lot of tourists coming through that filter from the top of Portobello Road, and it's much more fashion orientated down this end. You get really unique things here and things that you don't get in other markets. So it's very different, it's very diverse.
I run this store for about 3.5 years now. I got so many regular customers, especially Fridays. They come and repeat, which I love it. I like to do this. You can see how people is satisfied with your product. It's face-to-face, cooking at the same time. It's like so many cultures around. You got a couple of Spanish restaurants down the road, another Spanish shop up the road, and I think on that wall over there, there is like a mural or something about Spain.
And there is quite a largish Spanish community in this area. The mosaic is what I would say is part of our hidden history. The leader of the Westway Trust at that time was Roger Matlin. He was sympathetic to what we were doing, so he gave us that site. In 1936, there was a war in Spain. If you look at it, it's stories of local people who went to fight for the Republic. 16 people went from around here, and out of the 16, 6 died in Spain. The others came back, but it's just part of exposing hidden history of our area and the people who were involved in it. I don't know how long it's been there now, but it must be at least 7 years.
More than 20 years ago. A group of parents, Kurdish, Turkish, Georgian, Albanian, Arabs, Eritrean, Somali, they wanted to make sure their kids do not lose their roots. So they got together and then they formed the supplementary schools. A few years later, they contacted the Westway to see if they can get more help. And that's how the partnership was formed. Supplementary schools is a weekend, after school clubs, and they basically cover things that maybe the mainstream schools don't have. They try to do, art, dance, music, sport, and it's not just for children, it's also for their parents.
When I first came here, all that was here, there was a football pitch here, which was ripped apart. And it had some floodlights on it, and it was used a little bit by local community teams, but nobody managed it. There was nothing else here, and it was just a bit of a wasteland, really. We were building some cycle tracks, and then after that the football pitch, these football pitches, the tarmac ones were constructed, but that was with a partnership with the Inner London Education Authority, which ran education in London at that time. And the idea was that all the local primary schools would use the facilities here eventually for their sports activities during the week. And we used to have over 1,000 school children a week using the centre, and there was a teacher based here who worked with the kids. So it was, even though it wasn't anywhere near as sophisticated as it is now, it became, in the early 80s, it became quite a busy sports centre. Right at the beginning, Paul McDermott approached us. He ran a skateboarding shop just off Portobello Road, and he thought it would be lovely to run a skate park nearby.
This was like an old tarmac football pitch, and down the end there was just a big rubble and hole in the ground, basically. I had a friend that worked at Sony PlayStation, and I suggested he give me some money to help me build a skate park. It's like a sort of a super youth club, if you like, because you have kids of all ages and youngsters of all ages, youth, and from all different backgrounds, so which is sort of very sort of representative, if you like, of Kensington and Chelsea. There's kids, they come from, but once they're in here, they're all on the same level. We do a bit of BMX riding and we do a bit of rollerblading. We do a lot of teaching of schools, local schools from the area. We do events and had competitions, had all the top skateboarders in the world have all visited here at some point or another.
The centre was opened in the 80s. Initially it started upstairs, there is a bar and it used to be a pool hall. When people come to our gym, they feel that they're coming in from the service that they're getting. They feel that they're at home. The members that we have had a lot that's been here from day one, so you're looking at members that's been here for the last 20 odd years. The community feel and our community activities and programs is what makes us different.
After the events of the Grenfell fire, we acted as an assistance centre where first of all we were housing people for people to stay as they didn't have accommodation and that kind of thing. So people stayed overnight for just over a week that they were with us and sleeping on the tennis courts. Beds were made up on the tennis courts. Then beyond that, further than that, it was a place for people to come and pick up donations and everything that had been delivered and made and done.
On the Wednesday the fire happened, and we were still due to run another workshop on that Saturday, but we realised that we can't do that. What will we do? And so that's when we put the tables outside the front of Maxilla with some art materials on them, and we invited people to come along and draw and write, or just sit down and have a cup of tea, or just sit down and chat, or whatever people wanted to do, really. The outcome of that day is still on the railings outside Maxilla.
So since the fire, the Grenfell fire, and may all those that have died rest in divine peace, since the fire we have tried to respond to the needs of the people in our community through any which way we can, really. And Commit and Arts decided to offer voluntary workshops in poetry. In the beginning of that process, I thought, wouldn't it be a nice idea to publish a book? And we had loads of voices, not just from the community, although predominantly from the community, from the ages of 3 to 77, believe it or not. People just really united together to express themselves.
When I saw what happened, then it was like we can use this space in some way to help with what was going on. So this became a main donation centre. We also created a safe zone here where people could come and get away from that and know they wouldn't be hassled by people. So, you know, if we're talking about what historically has happened on this land now, this is one of the things that they will have to acknowledge the community did for itself and are still doing for itself.
North Kensington has always been a special place. It is unique to the borough of the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. You would not find any other part of the whole of Kensington and Chelsea as unique as North Kensington.
This area has got a personality. It's very original, it's a little bit countercultural, it's very avant-garde. I think it's got a good sense of humour, it doesn't take itself too seriously.
It's not gone anywhere. A real sense of community and everybody knows each other.
Everyone fits in Portobello, I think. You know, there's a place for everyone.
There's people from all over the world here, all different backgrounds, meet at this point. This is like a crossroad. We've got the disparity between the rich and poor, yeah? But where the crossroads meet here, all of those points meet. And that means anything's possible.
I think what's important is that you kind of honour their history and you look out to the community, but you appreciate that the community is changing, but you don't exclude people.
Without the community, you do not have Ladbroke Grove. Without the community, you do not have Latimer. You do not have a community presence in the Westway without us.